Good morning, general countries of Western Europe, and welcome to Daily Updates with Kenneth Bradshaw. I'm your stunning host, Kenneth Bradshaw. Today is the day I'm sure all of you starving and suffering farmers have been waiting for. No, not social reform, even better, the nominating convention for the Enlightenment Leaders Hall of Fame. Just thrilling, isn't it, folks? So, for those who are out of the loop, over the course of our lovely new 18th century, our best and brightest have come together in a grand old movement known as the Enlightenment. For these past few decades, our wisest philosophers have pushed the envelope, fighting for a slew of radical reforms like religious toleration. Now, the greatest of our Enlightenment thinkers have gathered here, right on our show, to present their choice for who should be immortalized in their fantastical Enlightenment Leaders Hall of Fame. Hopefully, some of you more uneducated folks will learn what you like in a leader and maybe even revolt. I'm looking at you, France. Speaking of France, our first thinker today is from France, although I'm not too sure he's happy with the place. It's Voltaire!
Oh, please. Please. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Glad to see you here, Volty.
No, thank you for having me, Kenny.
For those who don't know about my brilliant mon ami here, let me introduce him. Born on November 21st, 1694, Voltaire, known simply as François-Marie Arouet, at the time, grew up in the splendid city of Paris. Youngest of five in a prosperous middle-class family, he attended the Collège Louis-le-Grand, a Jesuit secondary school where he studied law. However, much to his father's dismay, law wasn't really where his heart was. Over the course of his career thus far, Voltaire has taken on many roles. A playwright who wrote celebrated productions such as his La Henriade, a writer who labored dissertations on natural philosophy, and a polemicist who fought against cases of intolerance, such as Jean Calais. His greatest achievements transpired from his exile in England. His wit really did always get him into trouble. Do you remember that good old trickery you pulled on the French lottery? You and Charles Marie. You were really struggling, but he sure helped you out. He solved the prices of the tickets. The cost of all the lottery tickets was less than the prize money. You bought the whole lot and had no chance of losing. They tried taking you to court, but you were too clever. That poor French minister. Now you're rich, and even better, on my show.
Let's get to the point, shall we, Kenny?
Right. Exile in England. I'm sure you've all seen some of his most famous, or rather, infamous pieces. The philosophic letters on the English and the treatise of toleration, advocating for Voltaire's bravest beliefs, his disapproval of absolutism, his love for tolerance in all forms, and most importantly, his appreciation for freedoms of press, speech, and thought.
Thank you, Kenneth, for that marvelous introduction. No one could have done it better.
Oh, Volty, don't thank me. Thank the scriptwriters.
What? I wasn't... Let's get to the nomination, yes? That's what the people are here to see.
Let's hear it then. Who do you have picked for the Enlightenment Leaders Hall of Fame? Drumroll, please.
Frederick II.
Interesting choice.
Yes, despite my reservations for absolutists, Frederick has demonstrated a shift in the style of governing among monarchs I find most intriguing.
How so?
Well, first and foremost, I'll note that I and many other philosophers consider him to be one of the most educated and cultured monarchs of the 18th century. Not only is he well versed in the ideals and philosophies of the Enlightenment, but he also is heavily invested in revitalizing culture. A composer, a poet, a writer, and a player of his trusty flute, Frederick is significantly more culturally exposed and worldly aware than his father before him.
Thank God, what a bore that man was.
Aside from his exposure to the realm of higher thought, which was extensive, Frederick's stance on the role of a monarchy is what caught my attention. Many call him the king servant of the state, and in this I would agree. He believes that the primacy of the state should trump any individual or dynastical interests, be it king, junker, peasant. His emphasis on objective reason governing the state rather than the whims of the rich truly encompasses the essence of the Enlightenment.
Although, I do have a question. How do his actions align with your personal beliefs? And I assume they do.
Excuse me. Oh, they do. They do. My philosophy is simple: the efficacy of reason. I value progress, toleration, and the ever-essential freedom of thought. In all of these areas, Frederick has made great strides, far greater than what you would see from Catherine II the Great or Joseph II. For one, Frederick abolished judicial torture, except in cases of treason and murder, evincing his likening to Enlightenment reforms. Secondly, Frederick valued education and recognized the vitality of learning toward the success of his country. Thus, he enacted the General Education Regulations of 1763, the largest education reform Europe has seen to date. Finally, and most importantly, was Frederick's complete and sincere enactment of pure religious toleration. Not alienating one single religion, Frederick recognizes that forcibly placing divisions among religious groups causes more harm than good.
My. Well, you seem to know your stuff about Freddy Boy.
Well, of course. We are contemporaries, after all. I've attended his court, quarreled and debated over philosophical ideas with him. Who do you think instilled such a great love of religious freedom in him? I, of course.
You instilled in him baloney.
Simon Cowell? Who let you on my set?
Your mother. She couldn't let this grotesque display go on any longer.
Grotesque, Mr. Cowell. Well, I'm sure you'd know something about that term.
And I thought you'd recognize an idiot in the mirror.
Ooh, T, go on.
Frederick was no more an Enlightenment leader, as I am a good judge for talent. Yes, he spoke of tolerance, of freedom, of his so-called, quote-unquote, enlightened absolutism. But yet his mouth spoke louder than he could chew. He was all talk, but no action, merely a hot air-filled enema of false promises. He spoke of reform and education for his people, and yet he prioritized his military above all else. He spoke of eliminating serfdom, and yet he kept it. He spoke of absolute power, and yet the noble class of the Junkers bent him over his cold, wooden throne and spanked him with the hearty switch of submission. He had the spine of a jellyfish, the tensile strength of a rope made from sand, and the structural integrity of a virgin jello shot. He was weak. That doesn't sound like no Enlightenment leader to me. Oh, and plus, the Nazis loved the guy. Yeah, really. As a stereotypical image of the strong, burly, glorious German warrior, Frederick was frequently praised by the Nazi high command, including Adolf Hitler himself. No, the other one. In fact, Hitler had a portrait of Frederick hung up inside his gamer bunker when he died. So how, Voltaire, can you claim in the slightest that Frederick was a tolerant leader when he makes his bed next to the literal benchmark for fascism?
Thank you, Simon, and thank you, Volty. That's all the time we have for today, folks. I'm Kenneth Bradshaw, and this was Daily Updates with Kenneth Bradshaw.